Good morning. We're back. We're back again. We do this every week. Another Tuesday, another Sew Together Tuesday. So we're back again today. I'm going to give it a few minutes for people to show up. During that time, I'm actually going to change my needle because I need to. It's been a while since I have changed it. And even though it's not causing me trouble yet, I'm going to change it so just in case. And it doesn't cause me any trouble later. So let me find my needles. Good morning. Good morning. All right. I'm just going to come over here and change my needle. So I am sewing on my baby lock as almost always. Like I said, my needle isn't really giving me any hassle, but I know I've sewn on it a bunch. And so I'm going to change it so that I can not have any issues with it. Okay. And as always, see if you can see the flat part is toward the back. You can see the flat part of the needle. Can you see that? Okay, there's a round part and a flat part. Flat part always goes to the back. If you have a hard time getting this up underneath here, you can use a little hand mirror and stick it under here, and then you can see that little hole. Sometimes getting it up into there is not the fun part. And because I still haven't gotten my needle threader fixed, I'm going to put my reading glasses on and try to thread this by hand. Oh, I think I have to do the spit thing. See if that'll work. I might have to clip it even. Oh my goodness, yes.
I thought it was going to.
Well, I can't feel that it's going through, so I'm going to see if I can. Yep. The end of it is all bird. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Sew Together Tuesday. I'm just trying to thread. See, I just had to clip the end of that fray off, and then it just went right through. All right. So if you have been with us before, you know I normally use gray. Today we're using a cream thread on top. But I didn't bother to wind a new bobbin, so we're not doing that. So we're just going to change the top thread. All right. So now I feel better. I have a new needle in there, so a nice fresh needle. It's going to sew like a dream now, as always. But that is something to remember, is to make sure that you change your needle fairly often. The advice varies, so by project or by 8 hours, by whatever you feel like. Just make sure that you're changing them. It's a worthwhile investment, and it's a tiny investment in these needles. I've got the 9014 stretch needle. Let me see if I can get that to shut. There we go. It's the 9014 stretch from Schmetz. They are the needles that we use for all the Cuddle projects. So it's really important that you are using a stretch needle when you're sewing with Cuddle, because it's a knit fabric and it'll work through the fabric much, much better than a universal. It's been a while since we've talked about it, but the reason that we use the stretch needle is really because a universal will skip stitches, sometimes really badly. So, and especially if you're doing something where you don't want to go over that seam again, or you can't really go over that seam again, you really don't want to skip stitches because it just weakens it. So we want to make sure we have a right needle. So this we did. Brand new needle in there, some Metler thread, and then we're going to make a project today. So you guys ready? We are here today. It's still October. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so this week we're partnering with the folks from By Annie. All this month they've been doing a Sew Pink initiative, which just raises awareness for breast cancer breast cancer awareness, and also really pushes the idea of getting yourself tested and checked and all of that good stuff. So I wrote a blog post about it on my blog, and we're sharing this project today all about it. So I would recommend that you go check out their stuff. We have probably links down there. I know there's links on my blog over to them and what they're doing. And there have been, I don't know how many other designers have been working with them over the past month, but a bunch of them, at least a dozen or so, maybe a couple dozen, have been working to make different projects using various By Annie products, but also just doing kind of some fun things and trying to raise awareness. So there you go. That's what we're doing today. So today, for Sew Pink, we are making this cute little cupcake with a cute little pink bottom, and I'll show you how to make this. So this is a super fun little project. It started, I don't know, months ago when our little creative genius, Gail Camargo, came up with a pattern, and then I revamped it a little bit, made it a little bigger, made it a little easier to sew, and we came up with this guy. So that's what we're going to make today. All right. So I'm Teresa Coates. I'm the National Educator for Shannon Fabrics, and we do this every Tuesday. I'm very happy that you're here. We're going to work on sewing this project. Okay?
Are there smaller versions of the stretch needle? Somebody was having a hard time finding that exact size.
Oh, okay. So somebody was having a hard time finding the 90-14 stretch needle, and there are 80-12 stretch needles. I recommend the 90-14. The reason we recommend it is because you have a lot of layers. If you are doing a project like this and you had an 80-12 stretch needle, you'd be okay. You really want the 90-14 when you're doing something like the strip quilts, because in the strip quilts we have numerous layers. We've got the backing, we've got the batting, we've got 2 layers of strips. Sometimes when you're doing the binding, that you have another couple of layers for the binding. So you really need the strength of that needle, because the number is like the density, the temerity of the needle, like it's how strong it is. And so a bigger number means it's a stronger needle. So an 80-12 would work for projects, but a 90-14 is recommended. Okay? Hope that answers the question. All right. Okay, so let me move that guy over there. So I was going to tell you a little bit by Annie. If you're not familiar with by Annie, they're the ones who make the Soft and Stable, and they're the ones who make all of these projects. So I was like, what do I have that I have made with by Annie? And actually, it's quite a lot. I've made this one. So these are her patterns. I've made these, both of these. This is what's hanging by your bed, Hawk. Nice. So they're great patterns, and I really, really like them. So they're fun little projects. And was my first one that I made from her. I think it's, I don't know, I can't remember what it's called, all-in-one or something. It took me like 4 years to make, and then I realized it wasn't as hard as I was making it. But these projects are like what she does. But she's also the one who makes our stiletto. The product that I love probably the most, makes the biggest difference in sewing with this stuff of any outside tool. I love the stiletto so much. So if you've been watching me at all for a while, you know, like this stiletto. Here we go. Here's one without all the shine. Well, still some shine. Okay. This guy is great. Here, we'll turn it so the name is even right. Okay. So we're going to be giving away a stiletto and the kit today at the end of the show, quote unquote. So if you want to win a stiletto and a kit to make a cupcake pillow, then we're asked that you share this video with your friends, with your sewing groups. Make sure to share it with people who you think will find the information useful, and then you'll be entered to win. It'll be great. What are you laughing at?
Somebody noticed my thumb. My Ohio thumb.
His Ohio thumb. Yep.
Yeah. So, and I'm coordinating.
Yes, we're coordinating nails today. Because he has an Ohio thumb, I guess, being from Ohio. So yeah, so you know who by Annie is. You've probably used her stuff. If you haven't, you really should. She's got some great patterns, and I really like the way that they're written, so I highly recommend them. And this stiletto we use it all the time. I love it. So we'll use it today, and you'll get to win one. So make sure to share the video, and I think that's it. Was there anything that you see else that I needed to talk about? Not yet? Okay. Let's do this. All right. So like I said, we're making a little cupcake pillow. Super cute. We just got the pattern finished. Ta-da! So if you go to our blog, you can find a blog post about this project, some tips on it, and that hopefully I remember to share with you here too, because I wrote them a few days ago. But you can download the pattern. The pattern comes with the instructions and with the template. Okay, so here's the instructions, what you need to have to make it. All right, so I'll show you that real quick. Like I said, you can download this for yourself. All right, so you can go get it yourself on our blog. So blog.shannonfabrics.com or shannonfabrics.com/blog. I'm sure they're going to post it. Okay, this is the pattern. So this is the top, the frosting part of it, and then this is the base of it. All right. So when we make this pattern, there's a couple of different ways that you can deal with this. The way that I like to deal with it is to make my own full pattern. We make it this size so that it fits easily on your paper, because a full-size base won't fit on a piece of paper out of your printer. So we do it this way, and then you're going to make your own pattern. I've already done it, but I'm going to show you how I did it. Is that basically this is just interfacing, and I put the interfacing over the top of it. I traced around it, and then this isn't the one that I used, but I traced it on the back. Let me see if I can find mine. I might have thrown it away. Oh no, there it is. Look, here we go. So here's the one that I did. So I traced it, oops. So I traced it around this side, okay? Then I flipped the pattern over and I traced this side because I had already copied it around to this side, okay? So that way I can have a full-size pattern. If you want to just make the half-size pattern and you trace around it and then you flip it and trace around it, you can do that too. Okay, I like having the full-size patterns just because it makes it really easy. All right, and I did that with both pieces. All right, so once I have my pattern, then I gotta cut them out. Let me move stuff. So here's my base. Here's my frosting. I made sure to, look at that, I actually transferred my markings. Very excited that I actually did it. And then we have them, this one is definitely not in the right place. And these are a 1/2 inch down is what these are. So that's easy to remember. And if you want to mark it on there, we totally could. So I could just, we'll see if my pen will write. So a 1/2 inch, because it might be easier to mark it with a ruler than with my pattern. So I like to mark things like that. All right, so got my pattern. And then I'm going to get my pieces. So we're going to want the, we're going to want the top, the bottom, and then I've got some little scraps for sprinkles, and I've got a round circle for the cherry. Okay, so those are the bits of pieces that we're going to want. You can do it whatever way you want to. Obviously, this pattern has a lot of flexibility. This is the way we're making it today. And the fabrics that we're using are the hide, which is super frosting looking, which I love. Now the swirly bits, it just magically turns into frosting, which I think is really lovely. I really do. And then I use this one. So this is our chenille. And I use this for the base. So we're going to do that because I did it because it lends a little bit of the, what do you call that? Like the pleated sort of look of the cupcake papers. So that was sort of what I was thinking with this. And this comes in a variety of colors. And I love this one. We've talked a little bit about the heather. The chenille is really fun. It just has a whole different feel to it. Like it's still super soft and yummy, of course, but it's just different than the other Lux Cuddles. I mean, totally different. So, all right, so we got the fabric and I've got my piece of batting. So I already did one side, I got that finished, but we're going to work on this one. Okay, so first I'm going to cut these guys out. I'm going to show you also a little trick. So again, as always, if you have questions, throw them up there and Hawk or Ellen will send them my way. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to trace the pattern. And we do this with all of our, with Cuddle. Is we trace it on the back 90% of the time, and then we cut it out. So I have the DIY style, it's a magnetic board. And actually when I'm tracing patterns, a lot of times I like to use these guys. These are the So Tights, just because they're flat. Okay, but you can also use these little guys that come with it. You can see it just sort of cups it a little bit more. Okay, so I have this little trick in that I can magnet around my board and trace this, which is great. And if you have one, it's awesome and you will love it forever and ever. Because I know I love mine. Okay, but the other thing that I can do is this super cool stuff that I haven't shown you guys before. I'm going to put my little spray cover out because I'm going to spray already. We haven't even gotten to the spray basting, but we're all going to spray. So this is the paper pattern adhesive from Odif. So they're the people who make our 505 spray that I love so much. Okay, and they make this stuff, which you spray onto the pattern and then it sticks to your fabric. Okay, so we're going to show you how that works. Make sure this works. Okay, shake well, spray, and we'll hope this. There we go. I'm going to cover the back of it. We're going to let it sit for just a half a second. Okay.
I can barely smell that.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's a little sticky. It's great. Yeah, it doesn't smell hardly at all, which is awesome. So what this does is it becomes a little bit sticky. You can iron it and it will, you can iron it onto the thing. It sticks a little bit better, but we're just going to do it this way. When it dries, it just becomes like tacky after that, and it won't stick together. Like truly when it's dry, it won't stick at all to itself. Okay, so I'm going to stick this on here, put it on, boop, boop. All right, and now, oh no, I used the black pen this morning and now I've lost it again already. Oh, thanks. Okay. My tracing skills are not up to par today. Oh, you know why? I don't have my reading glasses on. Sorry. Old lady eyes, I can't see anything, including apparently the edge of the pattern. Okay, so if I do this, it keeps it a little bit flatter. And it'll also work so the next time when I use it, if I iron it onto the fabric, it'll stick really nicely. June Taylor makes one too. What did I do with the June Taylor one? Oh, here it is. So June Taylor makes one too. It's a little bit stinkier, but it dries and then sticks to it just basically the same. The O'Deef one is better if you iron it onto it the next time you use it. But okay. Oh, and somebody asked why you can't put the pattern on the fold. So it says center fold, like why can't you just put it on there? You can, technically. It's just a, because the fabric is so thick, it totally manipulates how big your pattern piece actually is. Because you can't get a sharp edge on that. So it's going to add like 1/4 of an inch, depending on how big your pile is, to the width of your pattern. Okay, so if I do, for example, okay, and I'm going to fold this in half. Let's see if I can fold this in half somehow. I might have to do it after I cut it out, huh? Okay, I'll do that. Let me cut it out, and then we'll match them and see how well, how it matches up. So you would see how the fold would be different if I, or how the cut would be different if I folded it first. Okay, all right, so I've got this all traced out. I just used my brown Sharpie pen on the fabric, and then I'm just going to use my blade. So this is my favorite little tool. It's the SAC-1 Olfa blade. Okay, super good little tool. I love it, and I'm going to use it for cutting the fabric. So I use this on all of the Luxe Cuddle that is super messy. Okay, so I'm going to use this on this tool, and I'm just going to use my rotary cutter on the other because it doesn't make such a big mess. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this right along. I just hold some tension on the fabric, drag it. Probably need a new blade in here to clip that off. I could start to feel it when it doesn't, see, because it's not cutting through quite as nicely as I want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and snap that little blade off. I'll show you how we do that really quick. Okay, so here, can you see this okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's my little blade. So this little part here is the one that's dull. So I need to take that off. There are a couple ways you can do it. A lot of times I do it with my hemostat, this little tool that's this part. If you saw me take it off, come right over here, stick it on here, and it just snaps. If I can get it to snap the right direction. There we go. Okay, ta-da. Now I have a little blade. I throw it in my little blade file. Okay, and now we'll cut again. And now it would be so much better. Look at that. Okay, so on any blades, whether they are, oops, push harder. I'm always scared to push very much when there are new blades. But with any blades, like it's definitely worth the not using it until it just can't possibly cut anymore. You can get rid of them earlier than that, like when they're just starting to not cut very well. So much better when they cut nicely.
And you're not pushing all the way down to the mat so that you don't cut off the nap.
Exactly. Well, and it's a weird because if I cut like this, so if I hold my hand up higher, it will end up cutting just along the tip of it. And what I'm doing is I'm holding it much lower, so I'm holding it almost flat, like it's really, really close to it. And I'm just dragging that along. So I have a little bit more that is cutting, and what that does is it ends up cutting just along the backing fabric. So you can see as I open it up, all of this stuff that's left on there is just going to be left. And so this will be really important when we do the front of it because this is going to hang over the front. But what it does is it keeps it from being less messy. So you'll see when I cut this whole thing, there'll actually be pretty little mess. And if you've worked with Luxe Cuddles before and haven't cut it like with a razor blade or with small scissors, you will have noticed that it makes a much, much bigger mess. And that's really one of the things that stops people from using it. So using this little blade is a way to be able to control that and really have very little mess. So you can see, ta-da. Okay, so I'll give this a good shake. This is my trash. I'm going to throw it away. Okay, nobody can be mad at me today. That was not a very big scrap, okay? So it's not big, all right? So then this guy, I'm actually just going to shake him out. And I don't know if you guys can probably see there's a little bit of dust. I always try to shake down because it's going to float, and if I can shake it further down here, it's going to float to the floor a lot faster, okay? And then I can use my little vacuum if I wanted to, all right? So you can see now it still has all the little soft edges on it, okay? Ta-da. All those little soft edges are still there. That's when it's going to flow over onto. It's going to look like the frosting is coming onto the cupcake. Okay? So that's what we want to do. And that's why we want to do it. All right? So now I'm going to measure this. And we'll see how big of a difference this made. There's so much tackiness right now because I didn't let it dry. Okay. So this one I can feel. See if we can get it to show. So you can see where the pattern is going. So if this, because this becomes a bigger fold is what happens. So if I were to cut this out using just the half of it on here, it would cut it way over here. So it would add, it looks like probably an eighth of an inch, do you think?
Yeah, maybe 3/16.
Yeah. So it adds to the edge of it is what's happening. So if I were to cut this with it on the fold like this, I would have cut it over here. I would have cut it bigger than the actual pattern is supposed to be. So that's what I'm talking about, is that this isn't a crisp fold. It adds length to it. So you will get the wrong sizes. If you're working all with the same fabric, it's probably not a big deal, but we're working with two different Luxe Cuddles, and now I get an accurate size. Okay. So it's just a way to ensure accuracy. Isn't always completely necessary, but I find it easier, and it's nice to just have the big pattern. Okay, so then we have the base. Okay, and you saw the cupcake. I didn't really care because the Luxe hide, it swirls all sorts of ways. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which way my nap is going. This isn't something I'm going to really care too much about, and I think technically. See, this is the weird part. It's like, I feel like technically the nap goes this way because these big ones run that direction, but these run this direction. So that's why, I mean, like, it doesn't really matter, okay? This one, I can tell a difference. You can probably see that. See when it ruffles up? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is my nap going down. So I want to make sure that that happens because that looks weird to me. So I'm going to do it this direction, flip it over, and put my pattern on there. Okay, this one, to get it sort of straight on here, I'm actually going to use a couple of pins. I've just got my big clover flower head pins here, and I'm going to put a pin in that little valley. I'm going to follow that little valley right down here and put a pin. Those are in the same one, right? Okay. Now from this side, I can line up my center line, and I can make sure that it's straight on there. Okay. All right. So now I've got it there. I'm actually going to pin that, make it stay for just a second. Okay. Now I'm going to put my little things back on here. I'm going to cut this with the rotary. Okay, so now I've got these in place. I am going to mark my corners because I'm going to want to cut those with a scissor so that the scissors will make it so that I can cut it more accurately into the corner. You can do it with a rotary cutter, but it's sometimes a little scarier to like rock that up into the corner and hope you're not cutting too far. So I just prefer to take it off. Hey, look, I remembered to take my pin out so I didn't run over it. That's good. So I'm almost out of rotary blades again. Okay. So we're going to cut just along that edge. Okay. You could trace it and then cut it, or you can just use this edge and cut it. Okay. I'm just going to cut this all off. And you'll see that when I cut this, even though this is considered a Luxe Cuddle because it's got a longer nap, it's not nearly as messy as some of the other Luxe Cuddles. And you'll notice this way it doesn't make a mess, and this way it will. Okay, so this is where we're going to get our mess, is along this edge. So that's the widthwise, and the lengthwise edges you won't get as much mess. So like this, you can see like there's basically nothing that comes off there. And it's because of how it cuts the nap. It's kind of weird, but true. Okay.
What are those cute little scissors?
These are actually the Karen K. Buckley ones. They are micro serrated. So any of the ones that we have that you will see, I have like a bunch of scissors that I use. Okay. All three of these are ones that I use and love. So I really just grab whatever is closest. These are from Maury, these are Kai, and these are Karen K. Buckley's. The thing about them is that they are all micro serrated. And so they have a little bitty tiny bite on their blades, which makes them cut the Cuddle and everything so much better. See if we can get a zoom in on that. Look at those little micro serrations. So there, oh, look at that, you guys. That's great. I like my camera even better now. But that's what grabs the fabric, are those little teeny tiny things. So they're really good for slick fabric, but they're also really, really good for the Cuddle. Because your scissor, because it's so thick that it needs to grab it instead of sliding, they'll actually grab it and kind of push through. So that's super cool. Okay, more little scraps. This one I'm going to take the little vacuum to, because I want to get rid of those. All right, here we go. All right, there we go. Okay. All right, so that's just like a little handheld vac that I use. It's Black & Decker. The biggest thing is when you get a vacuum, because honestly you can see it works really well to get rid of the mess really quickly, is make sure that you get one that blows out the back side, okay, not out the sides, because a lot of hand vacs will blow out the side, and then all that does is blow your Cuddle dust around. So word of experience is that don't do it that way, okay? Get the one that blows out the back. All right, so then what I need to do here is I need to mark this 1/2 inch, okay, 1/2 inch. I'll show you how I do this with knowing what that is on the other side and when we get to the front. Okay, so I did it. Oh, I need to mark my center. Things that I forget. Okay, this one not as important. All right, so I'll put that aside, and then I need to do the same thing on here, but what did I do? There's my pattern. So I didn't really mark my center. I just have a little snag up there. So I'm going to mark my center. Okay, right here. Make sure that that stays where it's supposed to be when I align these two together. All right, so that's going to help me get them, excuse me, in the right position. Okay, so I've got my top and my base here. All right, and then I've got my my batting, and so I'm going to put my batting. So this is a weird project in that I stick my Cuddle to the batting. So we were talking about this last night, Hawk and I, when we were talking about the two different, the different styles and the different batting that or the stuffing that we're going to use and stuff. And for this project, you don't have to put this onto batting, okay? You don't have to. It can stay really super soft. What it does when we put it to the batting is it gives it some body and some stability, which is awesome. But it isn't required at all. So if you don't have any extra batting in your house, it's fine. Leave it. All right. Anything happening over there I need to know about?
I'm definitely scrolling through some comments to see what's going on.
Okay. Can see you scrolling. Okay. So what I'm doing is I am putting my basting spray onto these now. Okay. What you're going to note is that if these little marks, if I spray this and I put this down into my batting, you're never going to see those marks again, right? So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to use my pin on, these are my big flower heads, okay? And I'm going to use these on the top and bottom middle. This, I can measure this from the front where my half is, and that's totally fine. But that I won't be able to see. So I'm going to get a little bit of spray on them, and I'm not going to care. But if you wanted to cover them or use something else, you could. All right? Okay. So I'm going to spray the back of this. I've got the 505 spray. We were talking about this too. So here is the real bottle. So that's what the bottle looks like now if you go find it in a store. I just have an old bottle, so it looks different. But same stuff, okay? So if you find this in the store too, it's just an older bottle, it's fine. Okay, and spray the back of it. This is my handy dandy sheet that I use to cover everything. Oh, and I moved my batting, darn it. Okay, it's probably because there's some tacky all over this sheet at this point. It really needs to get washed again. Okay, so
right.
now.
So what, back again, what did you use for your pattern material? I'm sorry.
It's just interfacing. So what did I use for the pattern material was the question. With this stuff here, it's just interfacing. It's just sew-in interfacing is all that is. Yeah, so nothing fancy. I do have Swedish tracing paper, and I do that for patterns that I really, really love and want to keep. I don't know, sewing interfacing works really well too. So I just swap my pin around to go the other direction so I can see it. This is my center. Okay, and now I want to mark my 1/2 inches as well. Okay, so I know in the pattern it tells you that they'll overlap a 1/2 an inch. Okay, so if I brush this forward, I can find my hard edge. Okay, and I'm going to put a pin in. That looks like a little bent pin. I need to get rid of that guy. Okay, I'm going to put a pin in here. And this is just my way of marking it. If you want to mark it differently, you go right ahead. Okay. The other thing that I've done is I've marked it here. So it's on the batting so that I can see it. So when I take those pins out, there's still some marking. Okay. So now I've got this ready to go, and I'm going to baste the back of my frosting. Okay. So I'm just going to put this right over the top of it. Like I said, it's just an old sheet. Nothing exciting. Okay, the thing that I like about the 505 spray is that I can do this, put it on the sheet and wash it, and it will come right out later. Okay, so I don't have any problem with the sticky staying in there forever and ever. It does stay on my hands until I wash them though. So sorry. By the time we get sewing, my finger's going to be covered in little fuzz. Okay, all right, so now I'm just going to, I did the pins on the front and the back, center, or front and back, top and bottom center. Do a little spray baste. Okay, I'm just going to lift that. See if I can move this. I need another set of hands. Where are they? Okay. There they are. That's right. Okay, so see now I can get these to line up. I can get my center to line up. And then what I want is this to overlap about a 1/2 inch over here. So I'm just going to pull this up. Okay. So I want my frosting to just about hit that. Sorry. And today I didn't bring water up. Okay, so now I've got there. So you can see it just about matches, just about matches. You could definitely put it down more if you wanted to. But what I'm trying to get is it to basically overlap this whole thing by just a bit, okay? So it should be fairly even. Looks like I can bring down that side just a little. And the thing I like about the Odif spray is literally, like, you see, I just pull it up, put it back down, pull it up, put it back down. Like, I get it exactly where I want it to. And then I can just get it to stick with a little pat. The smackdown, I think that's what Jackie called it once. Okay, so now we've got everything positioned. So that's how I get those two pieces together so that they're in the right position so that both pieces match front and back. Okay, so now I've got it here. I have a choice that I can do, and I can cut this out and then I can sew it, or I can sew it and then cut it out. I'm going to sew this part and then I'll cut it out. You can also sew all the way around the whole edge. So if you aren't, you don't want to spray baste, you can still use the batting and then just pin it really well and then stitch around the edge. I'm just going to spray baste it and leave it there. But we're going to start sewing here. Okay, so let's do this. You ready to come around?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. We're going to come around. I got pins in that guy. Working with the crescendo. And I'm just going to be working with, just using a long and wide stitch. So I showed you my stiletto and then lost it. Somebody said there's still a pin underneath there. Oh, there is. You're right. Thanks.
Stiletto.
Thanks.
There we go. Yep.
Okay. Thanks for whoever noticed that there was a pin still under there. I totally Didn't even feel it. I would have gotten there and been like, oh, stabbing. There it is. Not that that's ever happened. Not ever. Okay. Which is like every other time I sew. All right. So now I've gotten the pins out, I think. Okay. And I'm just going to zigzag it. So I've got it set on a 5 wide, 5 long zigzag. So nice big zigzag. So that's what this guy is here. If you have a baby lock crescendo, that's the stitch you want. Okay. You just want to do a nice big stitch. You don't have to do it quite this long if you don't want to. But I don't like to sew it more than I have to. So that's what I'm going to do. The sticky all over me is hilarious. Okay. All right. So now I can use my little stiletto and I just sort of keep this in position as I am sewing it. Okay. And I'm just going to work my way around. And I can use this little guy to sort of push things out of the way to see where I'm going. I don't care if it's exactly along the edge. It's all going to get covered by the fluff. Okay. So I can kind of lift my foot, see where I'm at, push this over, and keep on going. So I just want to get it so that it's tacking both the top and the bottom together. If I get it right along the edge, it's great because it won't pull up. And I am using cream thread because I wanted it to really blend in and not be seen at all, even if I was looking closely. Okay. Because really, this is one of those projects that you're going to be looking at it close, and the stitches are right on the front, like prime thing here. Okay. Same thing, just coming around this curve. So don't be afraid to, lift up your foot, make it go where you want it to. Slow down, all that good stuff. Okay, and I definitely have to pick up and move sometimes to get it to go where I want, especially when you're doing all these curvy bits. Okay, I'm just going to lock my stitch. Kind of don't have to because it's going to be sewn over, but I'm just going to lock it just to have it in place. All right, so now comes the fun part. Now we get to put the sprinkles on it. Okay, what should I do with that? There it is. Okay, so I cut up some sprinkles already, so we would have some extras, and that's what these guys are. Okay, so I'm going to cut up a few more just to show you how we did it. All right, so what I did is I cut pieces that were 1 inch tall. Okay, so this is my lengthwise, so you can see it doesn't stretch. This is my widthwise, so it stretches. Okay, so the width needs to be tall. Okay, or the 1 inch needs to be tall, sorry. 1 inch tall. All right, and then I just cut them. And I just cut them about 1/4 of an inch, so kind of, it varied, but it was kind of a heavy quarter. Okay, so I put it so that my line, come right over the top and see if we can get them to, oh, we're not going to be able to see it because of that light. There we go. So you can see that the pink is coming just to the edge here of the yellow line. Okay, it's just a smidge, but it's just a little bit of a heavy quarter. If you're a quilter, this makes sense to you because we have, heavies and scants, and that's all I'm doing there is cutting a heavy quarter. Okay, so what I like to do when I was doing these is I would put it on here and cut it at just over 1 inch, and then I kind of cut backwards. Okay. And I think on the other one I used I think I used 4 of each color. We'll have to look. Okay. All right. So there I've got a bunch of little sprinkles. Okay. These look like they're not messy, but just wait. They're going to lose some stuff and it's totally fine. Okay. So if I pull on them, you're going to see this stuff's going to come off. All right. So it's no big deal, but I really don't do too much with them before. I kind of just pull them just a little bit because I don't want to make them stretch and start twisting at all. So you can see like this one I stretched a bit and it'll start to curl. Okay. So you can, if you look in there, you can see the ones that I played with more than others because they will definitely curl, which is kind of interesting. So be careful not to curl them too much. So that's all I did is just 1 inch strips of scraps and then cut them up. The colors, I listed them. They're on the website, on the blog post of which colors I used. Okay. You can use whatever colors you want or you have scraps of. And these are all C3s, so I didn't use any digitals today too. All right, so now I've got these guys, and I have a couple of different options on how to put them on there. You could spray baste and stick them on there, which I did with the other one, or you can pin them. And today we're just going to pin, just so I can show you. But when I did the spray basting, I laid them out like this. So I just laid them all out right side up and then spray basted the back and then stuck them on. I didn't find that it was necessarily any easier than just pinning. And I feel like the pinning is kind of nice because I have a little bit more flexibility, and then I'm not leaving sticky spots anywhere on my cupcake. Okay, all right. You have any other questions out there? I'm just plodding along. Oh, but make a cupcake with me.
Yes. Everybody wants to make a cupcake.
Yeah, good. They're super cute. And I'll show you, I made a different flavoring last night. I'll show you that at the end. Unless they already saw it. Did they already see it, Hawk?
Nope,
Did you show them?
Nope,
Okay,
I didn't
good.
do it. It was a surprise.
Okay. All right, we got one little purple one. Let's try to move these around. All right. So I'm not going to put a ton. I'm going to take that one off, I think. Just because we don't want to watch me sew all day. An hour, hour and a half is long enough. Okay, so I've got my sprinkles on there. I can rearrange them however I want to. And I'm just going to pin them on. So right now I'm pretty happy with them. Let me get my pins. Okay, so now I'm just going to take them. I'm going to use my little pins. Get some more of this fuzz off my fingers. Sorry. Makes everything stick to it. So if you're at home doing this, go wash your hands and then come back. Okay, so I'm just going to pin through all the layers.
All the way down through the batting?
All through the batting. Yep, I'm going to pin through the 2 layers and the batting. All right, and that will keep it in place really well. So one of the things that I'm going to be mindful of when I'm pinning this is I'm going to start sewing up here and move my way down. So I'm going to have all the pins going in that direction so that I can kind of take them out that way. Okay, so because as we're sewing, we're actually going to use the ability of these pins because they're so nice and long that we'll be able to kind of pull them out as we go. Okay.
Kathleen says she saw the chocolate frosting.
Oh, no. People are spying in my studio. Okay, fine.
Or I'm being sloppy with my camera work.
That might be true. Not always super careful. Somebody asked if we could use a glue stick, and you absolutely could. Yeah, you totally could. As long as you had them. Like I would do it so that I had it to this point and then do the glue stick. I have not, as much as I know a lot of people love glue basting, it hasn't been like the easiest thing for me. I love spray basting, but glue basting really hasn't done it for me. But if glue basting, you're really comfortable with it and you have the right tools, do it. Okay? I have no problem. Okay, so now we're going to stitch these on. I guess we could stitch all of them on. Come up with questions, guys. We got to fill some time. And I'm just going to do a straight stitch. So I'm going to do a straight stitch. I'm going to still keep it in the cream, off-white, I guess it is, thread. I'm going to do a straight stitch down it. I'm actually going to do a lock stitch at the beginning and the end of each one of these because I want them to be firmly on there. All right. One of the things that I like about doing it with the pin in here is that I can get this underneath the machine really nice and flat. I found that if I just glue baste them on, they still sit up. So you can see if I take the pin out, how they just kind of sit on top. And I find that working with the pin, it makes it flatter and a little bit easier to sew. So really, it's not easier to sew, it's just easier to get it under the machine. All right, so I'm going to stick this guy right up here. And I'm going to stick it so that it goes all the way underneath the needle. So the blue fabric is going to go past my needle. I'm going to stick it down. All right. All right, I'm going to take my pin out. I'm going to do a little lock stitch. And I'm going to use my little stiletto to hold on to it and drag it down. Okay. So now I can do a little back stitch, I do a lock stitch. I'm going to cut my thread. So after I've done with all of these, I'm going to have to go back and cut all of my threads. What was the question? She says, what would you stitch in the cherry on at the same time from top to bottom, like you said? I'm not sure what that means.
We're not ready for the cherry
question.
yet.
Cherry is later. Yeah, definitely later. Okay. So now I can back stitch here. So this is another way. So you can back stitch the beginning, go catch that edge, go forward. What I have found is sometimes you could see it kind of will gather up underneath there, and I have to be careful, and sometimes I have to stop and get it to feed underneath. Okay, so sometimes one end of my cherry won't actually, be tacked completely. The sprinkle. Yeah, sorry. We talked about cherries and now I'm confused. Okay. So now I have to go find that. You saw the little sprinkle got all covered up by the frosting. Okay. So I'm going to get that in there. Drop this. Okay. See if we can see that. Okay, so you can see it kind of pushes forward. I'm going to go back just a little, and then I'm going to go forward. And I'm just going to use my stiletto to keep that straight where I want it to be. Because if you don't hold it somehow, it is going to literally just move out of your way. It'll just slide right along the frosting and be gone. Okay. And you'll notice that I always try to get this in underneath the foot before. You can also pop the needle down as long as you know your pin is out of the way. Okay. But make sure that you are getting that completely under the foot before you start sewing. Otherwise, it will shift on you. Okay. If it shifts and you need to resew it, just do it. Nobody will notice. Okay. Get my pins. All right. So I'm just going to keep sewing these guys down. And you can keep your clover pin. You'll end up doing a little bit more of a little kind of a dance if you try to keep it in there. And I've done that before. If I can get that underneath, then I can kind of just drag this out as I go. But I find that the stiletto works a lot better, and it's a lot less scary to think that I can see where the stiletto is really easily, so I'm not going to sew over that. Okay. All right. I think we might have half the sprinkles. I don't know. Do I want to do all the sprinkles? I might just do it faster. Okay.
I gotta say, using the pins to hold the sprinkles down, it makes it a lot easier to tell which ones you've sewn and which ones you haven't.
Yes.
As opposed to like a glue stick or
like
the spray basting.
That is totally true. Yeah, it's easy to tell because honestly, they all just kind of sink in, and then I just know. Yeah, here's where I go the next one. Okay, but you can see how they are. So as I move over here, you can sort of look at the ones that I sewed before, and the stitch that is in it, you can barely see it. I did try it once with a zigzag to see if I could zigzag over it, and I can, but honestly I didn't like it. It just held it down too flat. I like the way that when we do it with the straight stitch, the stitch kind of just sinks into the cuddle, and then the cuddle frosting kind of just wraps around it. And I really, yeah, I like that because right here, like if you look at this guy here, like you can't even see the stitches in here at all. They just look like they're magically stuck on there. Oh. When you do a zigzag, you can see all the zigzag holding it down. So you can do a zigzag, but it's not my preferred. Okay. All right. And I'm just doing the lock stitch and cutting my threads. When I'm done, I'm going to have to go back over this and trim the top threads because you can see I'm just going from one to another, and I'm not, clipping as I go. So I'm just going to do it at the end. Okay, hold that in place. Do another little lock stitch. Here we have two more, yay. Okay, my sole purple one, because I didn't have any more purples. I guess I used more purples on the other one than I thought I did. Okay, and you don't have to do the sprinkles, obviously. That's totally your choice if you want to do them. We didn't do them on the other one that was supposed to be a secret flavoring. Thanks, Hawk. So you don't have to do them, but they are really cute when you do. Okay, sorry, my needle's getting away from me. If I don't control it, it's going to get lost in something. All right, one more. Okay, so foot down, underneath the fabric is underneath the foot. And then I'm going to do a little lock stitch. So like I said, you can do a back stitch, catch the whole edge, use that little stiletto, keep it in place. Okay. And then I'm going to trim. So if you end up going off of it a little bit, you stitch too far, blah, 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 you stitch too early, it's all going to be fine. Okay. It will all work out. Okay, my pins. That pin did not want to go up. That was really weird. It's a magic pin. Okay. So now I put these over here. Don't go too far. Okay. So now I've got it. So here I've got all of these little tails, right? So I can take my little scissors and just chop off these little tails. Okay. The way that I did it with the lock stitch at the end, or not the lock stitch, but the clipping where I use the little scissors thing on my machine, it cuts the end thread and puts the tails down below, which I can show you. So I only have one tail up top, and so I want to get those. It really is kind of by feel more than anything. So if you miss one, it's fine. Okay. All right. I think I got them. All right. So now we got some sprinkles on here. All right. Now we get to cut it out. All right. So now we have it to here. I'll show you this side. Here's my little sprinkle sewn on there and my little tails. I don't care about those tails. I'm just going to leave them. But what I am going to do is I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to cut it out so that it goes right along the edge of my fabric. Okay, I find it easier to cut it out from this side, mostly because that Luxe Cuddle up here, the frosting is so fluffy that I have a hard time seeing where the edges are. And I really want to cut it so that it's just along or just shy of the edge. So this is kind of what I want. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm still going to catch that in there, but it lets me see the edge of the fabric so I can make sure that those match, because I'm going to sew it from this side. Okay, that's also one of the little perks of using like the brown Sharpie or black Sharpie, is it leaves this little edge so I can clearly see where the edge of my fabric is, which is nice for when I'm cutting it, but for also when I'm sewing it. Okay, so you can see I'm not being super careful. It's fine. It'll catch in there well enough. I do want it to be exposed though, so that's important for me. It makes it much, much easier for me to sew because I'm not trying to guess where the edge of the fabric is. Okay. All right. And then we just come down here. The edge of the pink I can see really nicely, and it's not fluffy, even though it's a Luxe Cuddle. Okay. And then all along here. All right. So now it's got the basting spray on it. I can kind of stick it back on, make sure it's all stuck there. Okay. All right, and then magically, ta-da, we have another one, but this one doesn't have sprinkles. No sprinkles on this side, okay? So once you've gotten it to this point, we're going to sew them together. You can, here, you could go back over your little zigzag stitches now and fluff them up, okay? Make all that frosting come back over like magic. See, this tool, I'm telling you, does all the things. She didn't even invent it for me, and I think it's the best thing ever. So you're just going to come along here, do all of this. So you could do this now, or you can do it afterward. Okay? Either way, it'll totally work. I'm going to do the rest of it after. Okay? So now we have our two pieces. Yay! We want these to match in a couple of places, so we're going to pin there. We want these sides to basically match, so I'm going to try to get those whites to touch each other. Okay. I'm going to stick a pin in here. And then I want these corners to match. Okay, so where these two come together, and that is really helpful. That's why, it's sort of why I cut the batting out, is because then I can see that a lot better. This is the part that if these don't go together, it won't quite lay right. So we want to make sure that they're matching. Along the top there isn't. So we'll go to this side. Get that to match. And you know, Cuddle is super forgiving, so if it doesn't match perfectly, it's fine. If you need to kind of shimmy things a little, it's fine. Okay, it'll all work out in the end. Okay, and I'm going to leave these pins as I'm sewing, and I'll show you how I use them. So I'm going to put a couple of pins in here, and then I'm going to use a couple of clips. Okay, just to sort of keep it. All right. Anything else from Ellen over there? Do you change colors for the thread, or the thread color for the sprinkles, or just use the white? I just use the white. Like seriously, look at it. Like even with the pink. Okay, you can't see it. The thread just disappears in there completely. You can't even see how crooked I sewed it until you get too close. Yeah, they just disappear. And the bobbin thread was gray, and I just let it be because I knew the bobbin thread wasn't going to show. Okay, so put a couple of pins. Okay, and because this is a lot of layers and I'm trying to get these to match, I'm trying to do it this way. And this seemed to work okay when I did it. So you see, a lot of times I'll do parallel, and that absolutely works. And if you have a hard time sewing it straight at all, this is absolutely the way to go. Okay, is to sew these this way. All right, I'll do it that way here, and then I'll show you how I do it. Okay, and I'm just going to use some clips along these curves, because the most important part for me is these, the corners, that they match and that they stay together. And I can do that via the pins, and these clips will just hold it basically while I'm sewing.
So the Wonder Clips and the pins and are all made by?
The Wonder Clips and the pins are Clover product. And then the stiletto is by Annie. Oh, and I didn't mention the batting that I used is that the same one that I recommend for all of the quilts and stuff. It's the Quilter Select Poly Request. Why don't I double pin on the top? Somebody asked. The reason is because if I'm double pinning, I'm going to come off the side. These pins are so long. So if I try to double pin around this corner, this is what it's going to look like, which is just not really going to work quite as well. Okay, I have a lot more chance of, well, that's not the right pin anyway, but you know what I mean, of stabbing myself here. And I found that it works really well to do it this way. And what I'm really trying to control are those corners. So that works really nicely for me, okay? And yeah, I'm not trying to control it quite as much up there. So I want to make sure that the corners match. So if it doesn't match as perfectly in here, I can kind of just shimmy it and make it match. Okay, so we'll do that. And then at the bottom, I want to leave a little hole. So these little corners, if you've ever made a bag, you've probably done boxed corners at some point, and that's what we're going to do here. But I want to leave a 4-inch gap. So I'm going to stick a pin in here and see where 4 inches lands me. Right there. Okay, so I'm going to put my pins this way, and I'm going to put pins right at the corner to get those guys to match. Sort of ease that up just a little bit, make those match. Okay, and then I'll ease that up a little bit. So now my bottom will match 4 inches right there. Okay, one of the things about sewing with Cuddle that's so great though is because it is so forgiving and morphable, things don't have to really be perfect, which is great.
Oh, so what did you just do there? You put 2 pins at the beginning and the end of the gap.
Right. So Hawk's noticing that like the pins here, I do this. So this is where I start and I stop, or start and stop, whichever way. And I'm just going to sew these edges. So I'm not going to sew these curves yet, or these corners yet. Okay. Don't touch those. I'm going to sew here, and then all the way around this thing. So first I'm going to do all around this thing because there's a lot of pins and I want to get them out. So we're going to sew this first. Okay. And I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay. 3.5 stitch length, I think is what I'm at. Let's move that guy up there. I do it with a smaller one for the sprinkles. I did do it with the 3. That's why I did it yesterday. Because I want them to stick on there really well. And yeah, I don't know if it made a difference, but I'm trying. Okay, so I got my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I start sewing. I start in just a little bit and then go backward. Because if I start before, you can see how thick this is. So this is a lot, like it's a lot right here. If I try to start this before my foot and shove it in, it won't make it in very well. It's going to really kind of, you know, buck. And so I start in just a little bit, bring it back, and that works. Somebody on the I Love Cuddle group mentioned a hump jumper. And if you haven't seen one of those are super cool. And they will actually, you put it behind the really thick part, and then it sort of is, I'm not even sure what the right word is for that. It just helps it get started. It's a little lift for it. Okay, so this is about where my corner is. So I'm going to shift because I want this to be a more dramatic corner. So I want each one of my little humps to be kind of dramatic. Okay, so I'm going to leave this pin in until I get really close. Okay, I'm going to take a few more stitches, and then I'm going to pivot, and like I'm going to lift the foot and I'm going to turn it so that it really gets a corner right here. Okay, because it's really easy to just sort of like swoop around them, and that's not what we want. We want a nice sharp poof on the front of our frost. Oops, I took that out too early. Okay. Okay, and my seam allowance is going to vary here because I just don't care enough. If you want to be more careful, you absolutely can. Okay. But really, like, this is honestly like one of the things that I love best about this fabric is that I don't have to be super duper helpful. Okay. I'm going to sew kind of straight across the top. If you wanted to, and I have an example of one that I added a hump to the top, you could do that to your pattern and add a little hump instead of doing the cherry. Sometimes we have to rearrange. Okay. So you can see as I've come that I've gotten a little bit of extra here because sometimes that happens. You get a little extra on the top. So I'm going to be more vigilant with my stiletto here, and I'm just going to kind of shove it under there. Okay. Now I'm going to work toward my pin where I think the corner should be. Put it down and pivot. Okay. So you saw that just worked really nicely. I just sort of shove it down and underneath the foot, and it will take it. Because even when you're sewing right with a walking foot, then sometimes you end up with that little hump happening. Okay. Foot slightly loose. Okay. Another big hump here. Take my Wonder Clip out. Sew it around. And then as I come around here, this is where I'm going to have another little pivot, and I'll go down the side. Okay. So this stuff is super fluffy, as you can tell, and it's kind of dense. So it's a little bit more for some of the machines. So if your machine struggles at all with this, you can cut off all of the batting for your seam allowances. Or not use the batting at all. All right, so then we're going to back stitch.
Or reduce your presser foot.
You could, but some machines I think would have just an extra hard time getting through it. So I think if you took the batting off, you're going to have that much less. Yeah, because some machines just, they can't, as much as they try, to get through, 18 layers. I've definitely had a few of those machines. So just having less layers will be helpful, okay? And that extra batting will make it a bit. All right, so I'm going to back stitch, go forward, come up here to my pins. I'm going to see approximately where I want it to stop. Back stitch a couple, go forward again. Okay, and then I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to do that little L thing that I like to do. And we're going to go off the edge. Okay, so I'm going to sew forward, come off the edge, cut my thread. All right, and there we go. And I'm going to do this one from the end as well. Okay, get that to shift just a little bit. It was off. I didn't like it. So I'm going to fix that and do the same thing here. So I'm starting in just a little bit. Take a couple of stitches, try to go back. You can use your little pins too here to sort of push it. But the stiletto is what works the best because you can see I can just push it into the fabric and make it go forward. Okay, and then I'm still, like, you would have to work really hard, I think, to get that stiletto. Well, maybe not that hard to get the stiletto underneath the needle. I'm sure somebody's done it. I haven't yet. Pretty good about keeping the stiletto out of the needle's way. Okay. All right, so now we got a couple of L's on there. Okay, so here we've got, let me see that. So we got a couple of little L's. This is where our corner is. You can make this a little bit smaller if you wanted to, but 3 to 4 inches is definitely what you're going to need. Okay, now we've got this. So this is actually where I am going to cut out my batting because we're going to sew a bunch of layers together. And if I can take the batting out, it will at least help a little, and it just makes it a little bit less bulky at those corners. So all I'm doing is just whacking out a little bit so that it won't be in my seam allowance. Okay. it. And I'm just going to cut it next to the stitches, but not through the stitches. So please make sure that if you do accidentally cut the stitches, that you go back and fix that. So this is the time too that you can check all of your seam allowances. You can see this one got nowhere near a 1/2 inch. Okay, that's like 1/8 of an inch right there. It'll be fine, totally fine. But you want to make sure that you've caught everything. Okay, so I can sort of do a little look-see. This one got close, but it's okay, it caught. That one got close, but it's okay, it caught. This one got big, and it's okay because it's smaller on the other side. Okay, it's going to be a little bit wibbly, and that's all right. Okay, it still looks nice. All right, so then, oops, I didn't do it on the other side. Was there a question?
I wish I knew. For some reason, Facebook Live decided that it was going to remove my comments, so I can't see anybody. So we're gonna have to lean. We're gonna have to lean on Ellen a little bit. Ellen, comments and questions are going to have to come through you.
All right.
And I've tried several things to get them back, and they are gone.
They're gone. Okay, so we can't see anything from anybody. So hopefully you're still out there. Don't leave us. We don't know.
It's the first time that's happened.
Yeah. Technology. It's a thing. Really, truly is. Okay. I've got almost all of my little batting pieces out here. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold the corners in. So if you've done a bag before, you've seen this. This is called boxing your corners. Okay. So I've got my little corners. I've got the stuff cut out. In some patterns, if you do this otherwise and you see boxing your corners, sometimes they'll have you cut it to here and then cut out this box. I put it in the pattern so we just cut out the box early. Okay. Would it help to decrease, somebody asked, would it help to decrease the stitch length when you're sewing in the dips of the frosting? No. I hadn't found that it made any difference at all. Normally we would do that. Normally we would make the stitch much smaller as we come into curves, because Cuddle is, one, it's a knit, and so it's not going to fray, it's not going to pull apart. That's what happens when we're doing cotton and we do this and we come in here. This is, all of this can fray out of those stitches when it's a cotton. Okay, when it's a woven. When it's a knit, I can cut right down into this and it isn't going to loosen up my seam. My fabrics aren't going to come out at all. So in a cotton, we would need to decrease our stitches and then come back up to our normal stitch and then decrease and then come up normal, or just make it tiny all the way. With the Cuddle, we do not need to do that. Okay, all right, so I've got a pin here, all right, that's getting my corners together. We'll do it on the other side. I'll show you. So here's my flat. All right, here's my two sides. I'm going to open them up so that my right sides are together. You can sort of see in there. Okay, because it's Cuddle, it doesn't really matter if our seams don't perfectly align, but what we're trying to do is get those seams matched up. Okay, so I'm going to stick another pin in here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew across this corner, and that's what will make it be able to stand up. So this seems kind of weird, but it actually works super duper well. But this is, yeah, like I said, boxing your corners. All right, so let's sew those. All right, try to get all that stuff out of my way, and then I'm going to put this all the way underneath. So I'm sticking it way under. If you come back over here, you might be able to see it better. You can see that my fabric comes way over here, okay? So I'm coming way back here. So I'm starting stitching in probably almost a 1/2 inch at this point, and I'm going to back stitch and then go forward, okay? Because I don't want to try to get over this big hump. I'm going to start on the fabric, go backward, go forward. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go backward till I've come off the fabric, and then I'm going to sew forward. Okay, at that point, it's going to sew forward really easily because it's already tucked in. Okay, I'm going to go forward, back stitch, come off. Okay, and I do want to make sure that I'm completely coming off of that edge because I want to secure, because these corners are actually going to get some pull. And so I want to make sure, I want to make sure that it's caught. Let me see. Trying to make sure that I caught the question. She said they still see a pin. I think maybe what they see is a sprinkle stitch, because they definitely look pinnish. Okay, pinnish, that's a new word. I don't think I've used that one before. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to stick it all the way underneath the foot, put my presser foot down, back stitch. Okay, and again, I'm still on the big stitch length, still 3.5, that was on? Yep. Okay. You can use that little stiletto, make sure it shoves underneath, that I'm catching everything that I want. Back stitch, and cut my thread. Okay, so again, making sure that I have both sides are caught. Okay, and now we get to do the magic. This is always the fun part, really. It's where you turn it inside out. So with a 4-inch, you can get your hand basically all the way in there. Oh, I forgot. We don't want to turn it inside out quite yet. We got one more thing to do. So you want to take our little scissors, and I cut one layer of fabric and batting. So I cut the front and then the back. All right. So I'm going in between the two, the front and the back layers, and cutting right up to that little pivot. Okay. It's the same way here. And I can't, if I do it this way, there's a couple of reasons. One is it's only one layer of thickness, which is easier to cut. The other thing is that if I try to cut both layers, it's way easier for me to overcut. If I only do one layer, I can only get up to the seam. Okay, so if I do it this way, I can only get to the seam. I can't cut past it. So I'm just going to cut right up to it. Okay, then we'll flip that baby over and do the same thing. Okay, and one layer, I can get it right up there, and you can see I can't get it any further. And that's what we want. And if I don't clip these, it won't let it turn out the way that I want it to, like literally turn inside out the way I want it to. Okay, so those we want to clip. These outside curves, if you were doing this in cotton, you would definitely need to clip curves in all of this. Because it's Cuddle, we don't have to, which is awesome. Okay. All right, turn it inside out. Da, da, da. All right, so now we need to push out our little frosting humps. Okay. Do. All right, look at that. It's starting to look like one. All right, this is one if you have a little chopstick or like this little sort of little stiletto. This one's from Clover. Is you can use this to get in there and sort of, wish you could see inside, but I can push against it. Okay, to sort of push those seams out and make sure those humps go out as much as I want them to. Okay, same thing over here, come around this side. And I find that pushing them with a tool tends to make them pop out just a little bit better than my finger does. Okay, look at that. Look at how cute it is. It's starting to look like a little cupcake for sure. Okay, so before I forget, let's fluff up the frosting on here. Okay, so you can see I just sort of scratch on it. I'm not doing it hard. Okay, it's just a really little light little, kind of like, if you do it kind of like little X's, it's really pretty easy. You'll notice that the nap goes different ways, and so some ways it behaves differently. Like here, you'll have less that comes down because the nap naturally goes up right there. Okay, so that's just as part of the nature of the beast. All right. Do the same thing over here, and then we're going to do the same thing, and I'm not going to do it all right now, but I'll show you just a little bit on the seams. So this is the top stitching, and the side seams we're going to do the same thing to make sure that it just smooths out all of our stitches and looks really nice. So up here, you're going to see that it's got stuck in the seam just a little bit. If I kind of just come along here, I can kind of scratch it out, and it just disappears. So all of a sudden that seam is just completely gone. All right, and one of the joys of working with the Cuddle fabric is it just hides all sorts of things. So, you know, all those uneven seam allowances in there, nobody can tell. It's perfect. Okay, and this one I'm just scratching back and forth to pull it out. You can also use a pin, and some people use like a little Clover pin and stick it under there like this. So you can absolutely do that too. Okay, I just sort of scratch it from the top and try to get it to come out. All right, the chenille, you'll notice, doesn't do that because it's a different kind of thing. So there's tiny little weird bits stuck in there, but nothing like it. Okay, so this I'm just going to totally leave. I think it looks absolutely fine. All right, so now we're going to stuff it, and then we'll do the cherry. So the cherry's on top. So we'll do that last, but let's stuff it. So one of the things that I did, so I guess we can show the other flavor now. Okay.
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 Come around.
Okay. All right, because we're gonna do a little talky talk for a second. All right, so let me see. Okay, so this is the one that I made before. This is the one that we showed in the picture, and this one I made with my favorite Fairfield stuffing, which is the royal silk stuffing. Okay, I love that stuff. It's super soft and yummy, and I made it with the Fairfield or with the royal silk. It is Fairfield. It's really squishy, and it was something that I didn't actually love for this project. One, it was hard to keep it out into the frosting bits here. They tended to collapse a little bit more than I wanted to, and it's just a little bit squishier than I wanted, which is weird because I usually love this stuff. So the next one I made a chocolate one. Ta-da! And the chocolate one turned out super cute. I really like him. And so this one I actually stuffed with the Fairfield, the polyfill. Is it something on it?
I want to see.
I was gonna talk about it in a sec.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. He knows I forget about these things sometimes. So the stuffing part of it, this is actually, I used, I think, less stuffing in here than I did in here. Yeah, this one has a lot, and it actually weighs a lot more because of it, because I really had to stuff it to get it fuller. So this one I was able to use less stuffing. And I like the feeling of it better. Okay, so this is just my experience, not rules, my experience. So the other thing is we just used the chocolate Cuddle 3 on here for the bottom, and then we did this. So I just quilted it, and I just quilted it on the batting. So I had put it together so that it was the batting, the base, and the frosting. Then I frosted, or then I frosted it. Then I quilted it. You absolutely could and probably should, it'd probably be easier, is if you put it on here, quilted it, and then added the frosting top. So I didn't think about it until I'd gotten the frosting top on there, and then I had to sort of quilt around the frosting, which wasn't the easiest because then I had to go around these sections. Not the smartest. So, you know, don't do it as I did. The frosting will make it shrink the tiniest little bit, or the quilting will make it shrink the tiniest little bit because you're bringing it in slightly. So I found that the base for it after I'd quilted was like 3/8 of an inch narrower, maybe 1/4 of an inch narrower than the other side. It worked fine. You can see I sewed it together anyway. I was like, you will work. I just, evened it out so it was 1/8 of an inch smaller on either side. Totally fine. Okay. But there's the chocolate version. And there's my spiel on stuffing. So today we're going to use, do you want to show them the box that we're using? So today we're using polyfill, which I have this ginormous box that you can get. Let me see. I don't want to show my shipping label. There we go. So this guy, it's 10 pounds of polyfill, and it used to all fit in the box, which I think is the fun part, is that this used to all, but it expands. So now I have polyfill for days. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. This is the classic stuff. This is how you'll find it in the store, but in a smaller package. It'll look like this. Okay, so that's the stuff that I'm using today. All right, and the reason is because it has a little bit more oomph, I guess is really, for lack of a better phrase, what it is. And it just gives it a little bit more, not stiffness, what's the right word for it? Because I love the royal silk because it just is so soft and yummy. But this one I need a little more. Oh, and the other thing that I would recommend is that if you're going to use this polyfill, is that you definitely use the batting, because the batting will hide its lumpiness. Because one of the things that I don't always love about this is that it can be lumpy, even if you do the little stretchy thing and pull it apart. It can still be a little lumpy in there. And with the knit fabric, you'll feel that lumpiness even more unless you have the batting behind it. And then the batting just sort of adds like a layer of stability that hides any of that lumpy. Okay? So you could use that for other projects too, if you remember that the batting will sort of smooth out the lumpies. Okay, so we're just going to stuff this guy. Stuff him. Okay, probably not pull it apart too much. All right, see if there was other questions.
Yeah.
Just, we got the winner. I know, I wish you knew too. Poor Hawk is just,
Flying
it's just
blind
flying blind over there. And No comments, no likes. We hope you're still there and liking us. Can you see there's still like a number of people that are live?
I can see the number of people that are live.
Good. They didn't know like run.
No.
That's great. Thanks for sticking around, guys. I appreciate it. Okay. So while I'm stuffing this, I'll let you guys know we have we announced winners. I guess they're probably on the blog for that blanket that we did last week. That we showed, the little So Simple blanket with the ribbon of hope, I think is what it's called, the fabric. We announced those winners, and we announced those that are on the blog. I was going to tell you about the I Love Cuddle group, so you can join us there on the I Love Cuddle group. And that's a great place to be able to share all sorts of projects and things, questions, all of that good stuff. And Ellen had a question that popped up, and it says, the different things and when you do use polyfill and when you use royal silk and when you use polyfill. Got it, like what the difference is. Yeah, and it really is just like, it's different because it does different things. And what was the other thing that we just did? The travel pillow, I like it for the travel pillow because it's softer. I like the royal silk because it's softer. I like it for stuffed animals because it's softer. For things that I want more body, I want to use the regular polyfill. So that would be like pillows, definitely, because it just gives it more oomph. So when you lay on it, see if I can see the difference here if I squish them for you guys.
So many cupcakes.
Oh yeah, so many cupcakes. We have like a bakery. Did you know? We no longer have like masses of just sewing. Now it's sewing and baking with fabric. I'm not sure that's a thing.
We've got a cupcake collection. We've got a pencil collection.
Pencils,
We've
yeah.
got an Ellie.
Yeah, we got a couple of Ellies. That's actually a good one. When I get this stuffed, I'll show you. I'll show you the difference with the Ellie too, because that's one that's actually a really good example of the difference between the Cuddle and how well it works for different things.
No.
Or not the Cuddle, polyester or polyfill. Okay, shoving it in. My words, sometimes my words get all messed up. Okay. All right. All right, I don't know if you guys can see the difference. If I push on it, like this is the royal silk. You see that? Yeah. You can see how much further, like, whoop. Mm-hmm. So they feel about the same-ish stuffing now. When I feel it like this is a little harder, but that's just how the stuffing is. So this is just much, much squishier. Okay, so I can really like, and I can't really do that here. Okay, so it just gives it more body with like basically the same amount of stuffing. All right. Okay. So we'll toss that to the side. I put the needle somewhere. Did you hear me say that earlier? Yes. There it is. I found it. Okay. So now let's see if we can. Sorry, you're gonna have to leave the camera because I gotta lick the thread, and I gotta get it somewhere I can see it. Good golly, Miss Molly.
Got it.
Oh, thanks. No stress. No pressure there, Teresa. Just do it on camera. Whew. Okay, I probably needed a longer thread anyway. We're going to try our best here. Okay. Another word to the wise. Choose longer thread next time. We'll stitch it as far as I can. Okay, and you'll notice like I double knot it and I get a big ugly knot in there. And that's because if you don't, it'll pop through the knit. Okay. So, and generally what I'll do is when I start to sew, so here's my opening. When I start to sew, I'm going to sew this direction because that's how I sew. So, but I'm going to put my pin in so that I go, or my needle in, so that I go this direction. Oh, it came out anyway. Let me see if I can get it to go through there. I try to get it to go through stuff. Okay, yeah. And then I'll take a little stitch and then I'll start sewing. Okay, and that helps secure it in there because that knot will want to come through the knit fabric. Okay, so if you really struggle with that, it's not you, I promise. Okay, it really is the knit, the way that it's knitted leaves like basically holes in it. They're teeny tiny, we can't really see them, but this comes through it, the thread. knot will come through it really nice and easily. So I'm just going to do a big ladder stitch here. Try not to lose my tail. Okay. And I'm not really paying too much attention, obviously, because it's hard for me to show you and stitch it. And, oh, I'm going to lose the needle. There we go. All at the same time. But you can see I grab it about 1/2 inch from the edge, stick a stitch through, and then I'm going to pull it. Okay. So if my thread were longer, I would take like 3 or 4 stitches. Oh shoot, I'm going to lose it. I would take 3 or 4 stitches and then give it a good tug. That's what I'm trying to get as far as I can with my tiny amount of thread. Okay, and I can feel this is folding in, which is fine. And so I'm just sort of like keeping it tucked under there and grabbing the edge. Okay. I have to go back and finish this later. I'm not going to have quite enough. And make sure that you're using a polyester thread for this too, because the polyester, you're going to be able to do this tug thing and have it not pop on you. If you try to do this with cotton, yeah, there it went. If you try to do it with cotton, you're going to be in trouble. Okay, so we're going to pretend that I did that and I tied it off and it's done. Look how beautiful that is though. Like, it really does just hide in there. It's great. Okay, I have to thread my needle anyway because now we have to sew the cherry. Okay, all right, so we got this. What are we looking at? All right, we're doing all right. We got one more little step to do and then we're done. Okay, so I'm gonna get a big bunch of thread here because I don't want to have to rethread it again. You can see how much fun I have threading it. It's like my favorite thing all day. Whew, tell ya. I need to get some, if you guys have suggestions for me on better needles with bigger eyes, that would be great. I think I have self-threading needles somewhere and I should probably just get those because those would be nicer. So I can get a little bit bigger knot here. It's kind of ugly, but I don't care because I want it to hide in the, it's going to hide in the fabric and I want it to really adhere. Okay, so this is my cherry. Okay, and I just cut I cut a circle the size of my coaster is what I did. In the pattern it says 3.5, 4 inches, whatever you can find a circle around that size, that's what you'll want. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to take big, huge stitches here. So these are probably 1/4 inch long. And I'm going to stitch all the way around this guy. Okay, nice. Big stitches just with, and I did a double layer of like two threads. There's a correct term for that. I don't know what it is. Okay. So nice big stitches. And this is basically just a basting stitch. So we want it big enough that I can get all the way around this, but we can start actually bringing this in as we go. All right. It doesn't need to stay flat the entire time. I can start gathering. Cuddle dust. Guess what? Guess what's in the studio, Hawk?
Nuh-uh.
I know. Can you believe it? Cuddle dust? What? It's everywhere. And I do it probably, I don't know, 1/4 inch or a little bit less from the edge. You could do it right next to the edge, like 1/8 inch or so, and I just tend not to. Okay, so 3/16 maybe is where I'm at. That might be my new favorite measurement. Okay, and you can see it just sort of gathers it up. I can pull it, set it, make it like this. Bring that in a little bit, have a few more stitches, and then I'm going to pull it just a little bit and get it to cup like that before I start adding in my polyfill. And that's how I'm going to stuff it. Okay, so now I've gotten it into this sort of thing. All right, so now it's going to be a little ball. The polyfill works really well for this, and I do like. This is actually the very first one I made. I made the royal silk for the body, and then I tried the royal silk in here, but the royal silk, because it's so like silky and yummy, it just kept falling out and was frustrating me. So that's when I used the regular polyfill, and I was like, oh, actually, this might be good for the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to open that up a little bit, see if I can stuff that in. Okay, get my edges pulled out. So you can see the polyfill basically stays together in there, which is nice. Okay, sort of manipulate it with my fingers, pull that in real tight. Okay, so at this point, I got a little ball. So I'm going to hold that, sort of pull that, so I can get it to stop, basically. Okay, and now I'm just going to do these big, big stitches across it. Okay, and that's going to hold this together at the bottom. So instead of trying to pull those stitches really hard and get that to seal really nicely, I'm just going to make it do it this way. And so afterward, I sort of close it up. And I can do that because, one, it's Cuddle, it hides everything, and two, this is going on the very bottom. Okay, so now I've gotten it into a little ball. Ta-da! Look at that cute little cherry on top. Okay, can manipulate the stuffing, make it how you want it to be. Okay, then I'm going to pull this nice and tight, and I'm going to do a little knot right here. I should have measured that because I would do this just a little bit longer, because what I like to do is at this point I can sew it around the cherry. Okay, so I'm actually going to knot it one more time. Are you ready for this? I'm going to do something weird because that's what I like to do. Okay, now I have a longer thread. Ta-da! All right. So now I have a big thread. All right, so now I'm going to stick this on the top. So this is where, you know, you can sort of just eyeball it, basically figure it out. Okay, and I'm just going to stick it on, and I'm going to start stitching it and just do big stitches. So this part, if you've got a little one, that's going to, you know, kind of rank on this part, I would really make sure that you stitch this with like a buttonhole thread, like the really thick stuff that has the coating on it, because that stuff won't break at all. Or stitch around it a few times just to get it really secure. Okay, you can see I'm just stitching down the edge, and then I can pull it and make it sit down onto the pillow. All right, and the further out you stitch it, the flatter your cherry will be. So you could stitch it closer to the bottom or stitch it closer to the outside edge, whichever you do. So you could stitch it so like these outside edges were in there, and it would sit more in there like this, or like it'll sit up higher. All right, so mine is sort of in the middle ground, I think. And really you can see, like, I didn't measure, I'm not pinning it in place. I'm just like, oh, it should go here. That looks good. We'll do it here. You can be a little bit more precise and get it actually on the very, very tip top if you want to. It's clearly not how I roll. A little more. Yeah, it'll work. Okay, and I'm going to stitch all the way around to the other side. So like I said, if I were giving this to a little, I would stitch around one more time to make sure that it was really securely stuck to the pillow. The nice thing is that even if they pull that off, they're not going to, you know, choke on it. It's not a choking hazard or anything. It's just a now you have to sew it back on hazard, and if you're like me, you want to avoid that if you can. Okay, do a little double knot. Okay, and then I do this thing where I stick the needle in, and then I'm going to push it out somewhere else. Let that thread tail hide in there. And trim that off. Okay, all right. It's a little off center, and I don't really care. Okay, super cute. Ta-da! Okay. So we have our little cute little guy, the little cherry on top, totally optional. You don't have to do it. I think I have another example. Hold on. You can look at the cherries, look at the cute little things while I get this other one really fast. Yeah, this one has the little, this is a smaller version of it because we were trying to play with the sizes. So you can see this is a much smaller version and tended to be a little bit harder, but this one just has a hump in the middle instead of the cherry. So this one I just added a little hump, and then I was like, I kind of like the cherry on top. But you could do that yourself with the pattern, super duper easy. Okay, just add a little round. All right, I think that's it. We just made a little cupcake. Look at this. We have a bakery. Do we want to come over and have cupcakes? Somebody asked about the fabric for the chocolate, and this is just a Cuddle 3 chocolate, and I think this is heather. I could be totally wrong. It's Lux Cuddle heather. Yeah, probably in a chocolate or something, a similar but I'm pretty sure it's Lux Cuddle Heather. And it's what has this little bit on it, which is super cool. So maybe Ellen can figure that out. If she doesn't post it up there, I will post it up there later. I'll go look for it and find out. Otherwise, this was Lux Cuddle Hide in Natural and the chenille. So the chenille comes in all different colors, and you could do all sorts of different cupcake bases, which would be fun. So there you go. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a winner, and that winner is, hang on, I gotta get to the right message. Wrong one. Okay, let's see. The winner is Pat F. of California. So congratulations, Pat. I will send you some fabric to make your own little cupcake pillow. I'll send you the pattern, and I will also send you a stiletto thanks to the folks over at By Annie. I really appreciate their participation in this. Again, please take care of yourself, stay healthy in all the ways, and go check out So Pink over at byannie.com. You can see all the different projects that they're doing. They have some really fun little projects that they were doing in all sorts of different sewing skills and techniques and styles and all that good stuff. So check them out too. I always thank them for having such a great tool. It's so much fun. So thanks for that. And if you haven't joined us on the I Love Cuddle group, I really recommend that you do. You can find us there on Facebook, and it's a consumer group, so it's for all of you to come and talk about the fun things that you're making. I can't wait to see your cupcakes too, because they are super fun to make, and as you can see, not too hard at all. Okay, thanks so much for joining us again for Sew Together Tuesday. We will be back next week. We're going to be doing a classic sewing pattern. We'll be doing the self-binding blanket next week, so that'll be super fun. We're doing some Thanksgiving fallish fabric, so join us then. We'll be having a great time, and until then, happy sewing. Bye.